Hi, everybody. I am Scott Lowe from Actual Tech Media, and I am joined by Simon Taylor of HYCU. Earlier today, we got some really exciting insight into something new that HYCU has launched that I am extremely excited about. And I'm not just saying that. Simon, how are you today?
Oh my gosh, Scott, it has been a wild ride this morning, and I am thrilled and excited to be here.
I can only imagine because what you've announced is pretty radical in the best way possible. So it's called, I believe, our cloud, and it's pretty cool. Do you want to kind of give us the 30,000 foot view on this? But before we do that, I just want
Yeah.
to. I've kind of watched Haiku probably from the beginning of its
Hmm.
current iteration.
You certainly have.
When you were the Nutanix solution,
Mm.
when you moved on to be more general purpose, and now you're really taking something to a whole new level in a pretty interesting way.
Yeah.
So, kind of tell us what our cloud is and what it means for the industry.
Well, our cloud is the world's first development platform for data protection. And very simply, Haiku has decided to turn the industry on its head. And instead of us trying to build backup and recovery services for every different SaaS vendor out there, we said, you know what? What if we just tear the cover off the Haiku platform and build a development platform that would actually enable any SaaS vendor to write an integration to Haiku in as little as 3 days? And it really goes back, Scott, to your point, to our original thesis, which was that we wanted to solve what we called the equivalency problem in data protection. The equivalency problem being that historically, if you think about every major backup and recovery vendor throughout the history of time, they were always designed to really do one specific purpose. There was a great backup product for Unix, one for Windows, one for VMware, and we set out to address the problem of multi-cloud by building this platform that was sort of inverted. It was purpose built backup and recovery services, starting with Nutanix, then VMware, GCP, Azure, AWS, Office 365, and then we linked them all together with this abstraction layer, and then offered that as a platform called Protege. But the problem was, when we really stepped back and sort of, using our self awareness, said, well, what could we do better? We realized we had the math all wrong, because it's not five or six different data silos that customers are using today. In fact, the average mid market customer now has their data in over 212 different data silos. And that's 212 different data silos because of SaaS. You've got
Right.
on prem, public cloud, and SaaS. And then this was the wildest thing of all. And Scott, I know you know this. There are 17,000 SaaS vendors in the US alone. And so if you look at the history of backup and recovery and you say, could anyone actually build 17,000 backup and recovery solutions? The answer is no. And therefore, almost 80% of the world's data is now completely unprotected and exposed. And it's this that led us to say, well, how could you protect it all? Right? We knew that you still need individual integrations. Otherwise, it doesn't work. We knew that you needed in app, in UI recovery. Otherwise, it doesn't work and it's not a real enterprise solution. And then we said we've got a truly extensible platform. We've got a platform that if you did have development capacity and unlimited time, you could theoretically add 17,000 SaaS services, but nobody's ever going to have the time to write them all. So then we said, well, what if we weren't writing for 17,000 companies? The 17,000 companies were enabled to write to us. And that is what led to this idea of our cloud, the world's first development platform for data protection.
So, you've identified and hit on a number of challenges we've heard over the years. As IT pros, we've been told for years now, just because it's in a SaaS doesn't mean it's protected. So you have to still back it up. But then the question becomes, how? They don't offer a data protection option. You just have
Yeah.
to take what they give you. So if you look at from the perspective of a backup pro in IT, you've got to your point, you've got data that's sitting on prem, cloud, all these types of environments, and you don't have this cohesive look at what's going on. And I see personally a number of problems there. Number one is what you've identified is you've got this massively fractured environment where you
Mm.
don't know what to wear. And worse, you can't actually have a separate backup. So even if you've got corporate policies and corporate controls around what you're supposed to do for data protection, you can't possibly adhere to those things because it's just not possible. A lot of tools that are being used.
Yes.
Um, Second, you don't have a single point of visibility into any of this. Um, and so you just have to go from place to place to place to place and hope that things are being backed up. And that just introduces massive complexity. And what I'm hearing is you've essentially created the abstraction layer is a great way to talk about this, but a service bus for everything.
Well, and Scott, I think you're hitting on the next point in the R Cloud story, which is what we're calling R graph. What we realized is, step one is democratize data protection by enabling any SaaS vendor to write to our platform. But as you very rightly point out, if you've got 212 different data silos to manage, it's not going to work, right?
Right.
If you have to go screen by screen by screen to protect them all, you still run into the same problem, even if it's the same vendor. And that's when we had this idea. And the idea was essentially, what if we could build almost like this beautiful tree that was divided by department and would actually visualize for you your entire data estate, with each branch being a different department, and then every leaf on the branch, in my mind, being a SaaS service or something that is run by that department. And we built it. We called it R graph. And we'll send you a visual of it. You can put it up here. But essentially, what it does is you not only can visualize, it integrates with your single sign-on. So you select your single sign-on provider. It auto discovers your entire environment. It builds this kind of beautiful tree, department by department, that HYCU has built. And then anything that is unprotected is labeled in red. And you can click very simply with one click on any of those SaaS services. It will pull up the marketplace integrations that we've added, and you can select your policies and go in real time. So, for the first time, we're actually helping the CISO, the CIO, the VP of infrastructure to regain control of their entire data estate and not just have one vendor or one product that can protect you, but actually have this single pane of glass in which you can elegantly visualize where all of your data is, how it's protected, and how it's managed.
So one of the things that I find very interesting is how you're going to market with this. Number one, from an end, there's two markets for this, as I understand it. One is your end user market, and the second is the SaaS vendor market. However, you're approaching the SaaS vendor market, my understanding, in a really cool way, because one of the things that's going to happen is someone's going to come to Haiku and say, I want to back up HubSpot, but they go to the marketplace. HubSpot doesn't exist, although I think it does, if I'm not mistaken. But let's just say it doesn't. So
Yeah,
how are you going to talk SaaS vendors into joining this thing?
yeah. No, it's a great question. So the first thing I'll say, I want to state the problem a little bit differently, which is, you know, we've talked to SaaS vendors, one of which was a billion ARR, a billion. So there's not that many of them. And they had gone out to an industry leading data protection vendor, one of our direct competitors, and they were literally begging them for 3 years to build an integration into their SaaS offering. And that competitor said, no, it's not on our roadmap. Your TAM is not big enough. So if you've got a billion in ARR and your TAM is not big enough for a backup company to deem you worthy of getting an integration, how likely is it that any of the other 17,000, 16,990 backup vendors is ever going to get that kind of enterprise level data protection? So we really believe that our cloud is the first step in democratizing data protection for SaaS. And I think that's really, really appealing to CTOs and CIOs. And even at SaaS vendors, the heads of product management are getting really excited about it. The second piece, though, is we really want to encourage these SaaS vendors to build using our low code platform, our cloud. And so we're making it free of charge. It doesn't cost you anything. Any SaaS vendor can write and certify a data protection integration on HYCU within 3 days. So we say that it goes from 3 years to 3 days because the simplicity and the low code process that we built inside the developer toolkit is so simple. It's designed so that anybody can write this thing. And then the last piece of this is we're also offering SaaS vendors the opportunity to monetize those integrations and actually doing a rev share. So I think there's a PLG motion. There's the free element of it, which is obviously easy, but then there's also the simple fact that a lot of these SaaS vendors, it's not that they don't care about their customers. It's not that they don't care about their customers' ability to recover their data once it's lost. It's that they simply don't have the time, the resources, or the bandwidth to kind of come off the script and figure out data protection. If I keep using the example, if you're an HR SaaS tool, the last thing you want to do is dedicate 20% of your engineering firepower towards data protection. That's
Right.
not the core business. That's not the business you're in. But unfortunately, up until this point, there really hasn't been an answer for these SaaS vendors. And my sort of tongue in cheek comment recently has been, "We're just sorry we didn't build this earlier." Because frankly, there have been so many of these ransomware attacks and terrible things happening. But SaaS
Yeah.
vendors really haven't had anywhere to go to get the problem fixed.
I hear one of the interesting things that we've heard about, obviously, to your point about ransomware attacks, they go after high value targets. There's I'm not going to mention names, but the timekeeping software in
Yeah,
2022 attack crippled that company as well as a lot of their clients because they had no way to recover because their backups got hit, right?
that's right.
And I'm sure that they backed their data up, probably using one of the other tools that's out there. But as a customer, anytime you go into a SaaS environment, you're putting the keys to your corporate kingdom inside that SaaS environment as well in a lot of cases.
And Scott, you're the third person today that I've heard make this comment, and I'm going to reframe it slightly for you. I believe that the SaaS vendors themselves are backing up their infrastructure, right?
Agreed.
The challenge is they have no capacity to back up and recover end user data. And this is where the mythology comes into play. People believe, well, the SaaS vendor said that they back up their data, so I'm okay. But if you
Right.
actually email any of your SaaS vendors today, and you guys should try this, just email a SaaS vendor and say, "Hey, we lost all of our data in the last week. Can I have it back?" And you will
No.
get a note from their legal department, and the note will say, per your contract, we have a shared responsibility model. We cannot recover end user data. And again,
Yeah.
it's not because they don't care, it's because they had no choice.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, especially when you want. I can if I think about. I'm going to go back to HubSpot. It's not that I want to
sure.
advertise or pick on them, but at the same time, there's to your point about engineering time. If they decide to build a backup a dedicated custom backup capability, they're gonna have an engineering team to sustain that. They're gonna have to have end users that are trained on that. They're gonna probably call it backup hub, and they're gonna make an additional charge.
Yeah.
And um, it's gonna be again, it's gonna fracture the experience for their users. But and so it's gonna almost have to be a product in and of itself with a business case behind it, and it's gonna be tough to do
Mm.
that. Um, and that's at least the way I look at it.
Yes.
Um,
No, Scott, you're 100% right. 100% right.
if there was a easy, relatively low cost way that they could just tap into somebody else's, backup stream, as it were.
Mm.
Um, that what I see Haiku providing is all those bits and pieces. You're going to get the console where you can figure out what you want to restore as a customer, and not have to call HubSpot to help you. You're going to get a visibility that you can never ever get from HubSpot in any SaaS platform.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, they can still rely on their standard T's and C's to say this is a shared responsibility model because you're going to, as a customer, you're still going to have the choice to subscribe to Haiku.
Yes.
And HubSpot's protected even more than they were before. They don't have to just say, hey, look at your T's and C's. And by the way, why didn't you subscribe to Haiku? Because we have backup available.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is almost a no brainer for a lot of SaaS players because it's going to save. They can focus on their core competencies, and you can take care of the bits that are incredibly important, but they don't have a good business case for.
100%. And you look at companies even as large as Atlassian, who, bless them, they're actually one of our key investors here at HYCU. And they were so excited about the R Cloud model, and that's why they invested actually. That they were had purview to it long before anybody else. And their comments to me were always along the lines of, you know, we have so many customers. The ability to prioritize on building a data protection company is just not our core business. We want to do that through partners. And again, if you're as large as Atlassian, you can attract partners. But I always think about, if you go down a click, right? And we're not talking tiny, but if you're a company with 100 million or ARR, 200 million ARR, even 500 million ARR, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting data protection vendors to pay attention to you. And yet you probably have tens of thousands of customers around the world who are depending on you to recover their data in the event of an incident. And I think a lot of folks get hung up on, well, how often do ransomware attacks happen? Well, we know they happen one every 6 seconds. I mean, it's all the time. But it's not just ransomware attacks that we're protecting from. And customers accidentally delete data all the time.
Right.
They bring in some intern, the intern turns on, their marketing tech. They delete, a week's work. Wouldn't it be great to be able to recover that in an instant and just have that back and not have that sort of added stress? So I think there's a constant need for recovery, and I think we've really simplified the process of giving that to customers.
Now, will the tool basically move data out of the SaaS provider's environment into the HYCU cloud too? I mean, it's the air gaps the data in a way that they may not be doing right now, and it provides an additional layer of protection. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate. So one of the things that Haiku has always said is we don't sell storage. That
Hmm.
said, we have integrated with Wasabi, and we announced that today, and we're thrilled about that. There's other targets coming, but the initial target is Wasabi. It's a
Love
great,
Wasabi.
yeah. I mean, they're just excellent. They're a great, great platform. It's effectively cloud storage without the egress costs. They do a wonderful job. David Friend and the team have been great partners to Haiku, and honestly, massive supporters of our cloud. They understand intuitively that this is what the market needs. And so we spent a lot of time talking to those folks and eventually decided, look, we're going to make you the first target. So effectively, what happens is when you back up using our cloud, your data is all going to sit in Wasabi, which creates that sort of virtual air gap that we're talking about. But then on top of that, you're going to hear other folks, I think, Scott, who will say, well, yeah, but the backup's pretty easy to write. I could write a backup for Jira. I could write a backup for this. The challenge is the recovery.
Right.
And what we've patented inside of our cloud is the ability to do granular in UI recovery. So when you back it up, you can actually recover it directly during in the UI. For example, with Jira, you can see by project, you can select by date. So you're not just getting some massive CSV file that goes on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. You're getting a very, very simple, manageable data recovery process that you can actually implement right away.
What's the granularity of what can be recovered? I mean, this might not be a great question, but how far down? I mean, is it a like it's going to probably I assume be product by product to a point. But like going to Jira, is it to a project level? Going to HubSpot, is it a record level? Like, is it configurable? How does that work?
Yeah, so you absolutely nailed it. It is dependent on the type of SaaS we're talking about. No SaaS service is created equal, unfortunately. If it
Right.
was, I think this would have been done years ago.
Right.
What we've had to do is really come up with an entirely new approach to building almost like a tree for the recovery that is generic enough, but universal enough. I shouldn't say generic, more universal enough to be able to handle all manner of different projects and all manner of different SaaS services. And then what we do is we actually have experts in each category of SaaS service, whether it's DevOps or CRM, ERP, et cetera. And those sort of vertical experts then get involved on our team, on our engineering team, and they make sure that we can go as deep as possible. So with Jira, you're absolutely right. It is projects, and with a HubSpot type solution, it is going to be per record. But this is where it got really interesting, and why I think only a company that was built as recently as we are had the ability to build something like our cloud. If you tried to take legacy technology, we won't mention names, but any of the folks that were built before SaaS or before cloud, I think this would be a really, really, this would be a giant mountain to climb. And
Right.
I think the ability for us to build this sort of universal recovery process that is granular is something completely new on the market.
So let's flip to the customer side.
Yeah.
So I'm a customer. I have HubSpot. I have Atlassian products, whether they are.
Mhm.
How do I get this? Like, let's assume that the integrations are built. What do I?
Yeah.
I mean, what do I need? What hoops do I need to jump through?
We've tried to remove all the hoops.
That's
So,
why I asked.
yes.
I
So we the way that we approached the building of our cloud was to say we want this to be pure SaaS. There's a lot of SaaS washing going on these days, where folks will say, well, it's a term license, or well, it's this, and then you get a
Right.
box in the mail. I think in the case of Haiku, we wanted this to be pure SaaS. And so what you do is you go to protege.haiku.com. You can log in directly using either your Haiku login, your cloud login, or your Okta login. That then pulls up a directory that says you can choose which single sign-on provider you use, Okta or Active Directory. You select that. It will auto discover your environment, build that beautiful tree we talked about, our graph. From there, you'll be able to see all your SaaS services and your on-prem and public cloud environments. You'll be able to see which are protected, which are not. And then you very simply go through and select the ones that aren't protected, turn on the integrations, set your policies, set and forget and go.
That's kind of cool. So I have to ask the question that nobody likes, but is it how are you monetizing this? Like how when I'm a customer and I want to back up, my Atlassian tools, is
Yeah.
it is it per user? How does that work? Obviously, every people are going to expect to have to pay for something here.
Sure, sure. And they will. They will. What I'll say first and foremost, though, is everything I just described up until the data protection, they can get free of charge. So,
Hmm.
our graph, the ability to see your environment, we really do want to protect customers and just, companies and organizations around the world. Everybody should go and try this. Every CISO today should get online, turn this on, and just go see what this looks like. Beyond that, we wanted to create a monetization model that was incredibly simple and as game changing as our cloud itself. And so what we said is, we are going to charge approximately $2 per seat per integration. And the reason I say approximately is it's actually $1, $2, or $3 per seat, depending on the category of integration.
Okay.
So we've broken those categories down by DevOps and CRM, ERP, et cetera. Each category might have a slight difference, just dependent on the amount that's stored, the data, et cetera. So you turn it on and you're ready to go. And it's really as easy as that. It's for us, it's about making sure we can protect as many customers as possible. We don't want you to have bills that you can't control. We don't want you to be sitting around worrying that your R cloud bill is going to show up and it's going to be, to the moon and back. We want you to have a predictable, repeatable cost structure, but one that also protects you and every single one of your users across your organization.
I have to suspect that CISOs and data protection folks are going to glom onto this. I mean, I if I was still a practitioner in an IT facing role, this would be really interesting to me because even it's even hard sometimes to get VMs and cloud backed up into the same tool, let alone all the SaaS tools,
Yeah.
and it does really create some chaos at times, especially when you start. Backup is easy to your point. Recovery is hard, so
Yeah.
it's easy to get data somewhere, but then when you have to recover it, it's a nightmare sometimes. So
Well,
you're
I
making
think
that super
the
easy.
yeah, I think the way that sort of all of our competitors have gone after the SaaS market has really been through acquisition, which is a fine business strategy, commercial strategy. I mean, they acquire a company that has Salesforce backup and they start selling it. The challenge is you end up with a different screen, an entirely different tool for every
Right.
single one of your offerings, every single one of your data silos. And so
Yep.
imagine if the average mid-market company has 212 data silos, can you imagine what it would look like if they had 212 different backup screens? I mean, it would just be outlandish. It would be silly,
Yeah.
and it's obviously completely unscalable. And so I think with our cloud, we're really reducing this down to that one tree, that one management plane, and that one ability to protect all your data, regardless of where it sits.
So you announced our cloud today, and I know it's still early days, but how many integrations do you have so far?
That's a great question. So we've got 20 built. We've got a 15 that are currently in development, with partners, and we have a goal of 100 by the end of 2023. So we are
Very nice.
moving fast and furiously. And
And I
just to
assume
give some context, Scott, to that, because when I say those numbers, people often say to me, "Well, is that good or bad?" I don't know. So just to give you context, out of the 17,000 SaaS services, right, in the US today, only 5 are protected by any member of the Gartner Magic Quadrant for enterprise backup and recovery.
only
5.
five.
5. And so the ability for us to add 100 in one calendar year, the ability for us to launch with the number that we have is an astronomical improvement over anything else that's been in the market. And obviously, the sky's the limit. I mean, the more SaaS vendors come in and sign up, the more we'll be able to put into that marketplace.
Yeah, it feels like this is gonna be sort of a snowball type thing, to be honest. Um, I wouldn't be surprised to hear at the end of the year you're over 100,
We
um,
certainly hope so.
especially if this is self-service to an extent.
Oh, it
Um,
is. Absolutely.
and I mean, I would imagine that probably there's some iteration that has to happen early on, but all of that stuff can be applied to everybody else, and you just accelerate the potential for adoption as you figure out new challenges.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. I think it's very exciting, and it's funny when we set 100, we set out this goal of 100 internally. People sort of hummed and hawed about it, and then when we started speaking to the press about our cloud and about this launch today, we had a gentleman say, one of the reporters said, he said, "Well, why did you set your sights so low? I mean, it's obvious you're going to have 500 within the first year." And you sort of go, "Wow, we've really hit something." We are. It seems as though we really are striking a nerve. We're striking a chord with folks in the industry who have watched this pain kind of, as you said, snowball over the last few years, and there really just hasn't been a solution for it until now.
Well, from my perspective, this is brilliant. I mean, I've really enjoyed watching Haiku as it's evolved over the years, and this is an evolutionary leap, in my opinion, and it's going to be uh, the potential on a number of levels appears absolutely incredible, and I'm really excited to see how far above 100 you achieve by the end of this year.
Thank you
Um,
so much, Scott.
I
That
do
means the
believe
world to us.
so. What else should we know?
That's already a lot. I'm worried our listeners are going to be are going to be overwhelmed here. But I think, look, I would just say this. I would say that 30 years ago, 20 years ago, my father was the CIO of a pretty large company, and I wouldn't tell him this, but I sometimes joke that his job was relatively easy because he only had his data in 5 or 6 different places.
Yeah,
10 years ago, I think data was probably in 15 or 20, and today it's in 212.
yeah.
Unless we do something to fix this problem, it's going to be absolute chaos in the future. And so I'm really thrilled that we can be here to help. I'm really thrilled that we've created this new approach, and I'm excited to watch the world sort of take hold of it. But I want to thank folks like you, Scott, for really understanding the problem and the challenge and being there with us every step of the way as we've launched this right out of the gate.
Always happy to do it. I've like I said, I always like working with you guys, learning more from what you're doing. It's I've said before, I've been in the industry almost 30 years. It's hard to get super excited about certain things, especially backup. No, I'm kidding, but it's
No, I'm with you.
this is one of those things where it's like this is freaking brilliant. And I'm really excited to see how it turns out. And I assume if people want to learn more, they can go to haiku.com.
Absolutely. Go to haiku.com. It's right there on the homepage.
Sounds good. Simon, as always, thank you for joining us today. I'm congratulations on an incredible launch, and really look forward to doing more with learning more about this over the next few weeks.
Thank you so much, Scott, for having us on.